We have a really special guest, a cool guest. I knew a little bit about Deventri, but I didn't know a lot. And so when I started reading more about him, I was like, man, this guy, he has an amazing backstory. We're talking about athletic training, but not just like for you and me. We're talking about like what do the people do who want to get to the next level, the professional level. We know we also have a lot of youth who are involved in sports, who have these big dreams and trying to find the edge there. So all of these things, I just wanted to kind of pick his brain. So if you could help me welcome everybody. We don't have a live audience, I'm just kidding, Deventri, but help me welcome Deventri Jordan. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I started reading more and more about you, and I was like, man, you have an incredible sort of how you got here story. Can you kind of walk us through that?
You know, sports is something I've always done my whole life. It was something that kept me out of trouble growing up in a single family household, playing football, running track. I grew up in North Minneapolis and went to college at St. Cloud State, played football there. That's where I got my undergrad, and I took a internship with Under Armour coming out of college, and we got the opportunity to kind of travel across the world, and then I started working for IMG Academies down in Bradenton, Sarasota, Florida, and being dispersed on campus, I'm watching so many different things happen and so many different people training that I kind of took a nap for. I'm like, hey, I want to learn how to do this. So I had some great people that kind of took me under their wing and taught me a lot of different things. And at the same time, I had a son who was growing up before my eyes. And back in those days, you know, we didn't have iPhones, right? So I got to get a phone call from my wife, and she's kind of telling me what's going on. And I decided to move back to Minnesota and start up game-based training out the trunk of our car. And we worked out of a number of churches over the years, and I had a little Beat by Dre boom box, and I had some equipment off of eBay, and kind of one thing led to another where our athletes started getting better. And I'm telling myself one day at the kitchen table, like, this is working. Like I'm doing this. Like, this is happening. So I went to a small space, about 700 square feet one year, and we outgrew that in the summer. And then I went to a bigger space, about 1,500 square feet. Outgrew that in a year. Then we went to about 7,000 square feet, outgrew that. And then kind of like at the turn of that year, COVID kind of hit. I dealt with some setbacks with my some family passing away, which really kind of took me for a whirlwind. And then I met with Lifetime, which I still have a partnership with Lifetime Fitness. We did a contract where we went to Lifetime, and we had the biggest kids program in the country called Game-Based Sport that we developed. Got an opportunity to go train in Florida, which we still do now. We do our NBA pre-draft out there, and some of our NFL combine training in Florida. And then I have a partnership with Health Partners, TRIA. We just built our first training facility in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, where we have a blend of medical and performance together. We have about 20,000 square feet where we're seeing patients all day that are in sports, and we're also training our athletes. And it's just a whirlwind of like my career over the last 20 years of how the opportunity of just staying in it, you know, just like I tell athletes, like, you know, it doesn't always seem up all the time, but you know, the consistency wins the race. And we've a consistent brand, consistent training, and we're probably one of the only two training brands in the state of Minnesota where we've developed athletes all the way from youth to professional athletes. You know, you look at like the Paige Beckers of the world. She's been with us since 8th grade. You look at the Theo Johns, you look at the Evan Halls, Amani Hookers. We've touched so many different athletes, and we're able to help them like along their journey of lives. And then going forward, like I just left the field. We got about 10 guys up here right now for NFL off-season training that we're working with right now that are getting ready for their current season. And then at the same time, we have a ton of athletes that are getting ready to go play in the NBA Summer League in Vegas. So it's amazing just to talk to these athletes all the time.
It's so impressive, this like empire that you have really built. You know, like you said, so much work, so many years. That kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. You brought up something interesting I wanted to ask you about. So you brought up Paige, and I think a lot of us know, some of us know the backstory of how she came up, and it was in 8th grade when my former coworker Gary Knox over at Care 11 took a picture of her on the court and said, "Watch this one," and then here we are. I wanted to ask you about athletes at that age because nowadays that is actually even more common, as you know, than it was back then, to see these young kids catching the eye of colleges, and they're starting to watch them 7th, 8th grade. How do you balance that as a trainer, kind of keeping them kids but also getting them on the path to reach their goals?
Great question. So a lot of it is I have to talk to the parents. And I call it simple. Stay in your lane, and let's keep this process. I call it simple, stupid. I think what happens is nowadays, because these parents want their kids to do so well, that sometimes it becomes detrimental to a kid's athletic ability. And I think parents want to see the kid do what they couldn't do versus what the kid should be doing. If that makes sense. Yeah. So when I take on an athlete, I tell a parent right away, I just want you to be mom or dad. I want you to celebrate the wins, pick them up where they're down, because it's going to be my job to help make them and develop them to a better athlete, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so if they agree to do that, then I'm able to help an athlete along their athletic journey. And we just have a great training curriculum that we use for all of our athletes to help them get to the next level. Yeah, it's such a great point. I mean, as we all know, and parents, and I've been one of them, and you're in the stands watching your kid, and then there's the pressure from the other parents that you feel sometimes of like, well, if my kid's not playing well, then, they're going to blame me or my kid. I mean, it's kind of crazy the way that it's gotten, and the way sometimes we treat the referees or the umpires, like it's just... Oh, it's terrible. And I hear all these stories from the pro level all the way to the youth level. But ultimately, it's about what does the kid really want. Some of these kids just want to play sports because they want to make friends, right? Some really want to get a scholarship, right? Because that's all they have. Some really believe they could get to the next level. I've had kids that walk through my door and saying, "Hey, I'm going to play pro. I'm going to play pro," and they have the ability, but then they get around the wrong group of people, and they kind of fall to the wayside. Or you have that late bloomer who doesn't understand that they're really that good, and then all of a sudden they catch a whiff of confidence and they just skyrocket. So, and nowadays with this NIL money and all this stuff that's changing the scope of the industry, these kids are starting to realize at a young age that, hey, I have some opportunity. I don't have to wait to be a professional athlete to make some money or to get some notoriety. Especially with social media now,
For sure, game changer.
It is.
So what's the age range that you typically work with? Because I want to ask you about those who are getting ready for the pros.
For our company, we train an athlete from 9 years old all the way up to professional athletes. Myself, I typically work with the high-level collegiate and professional athletes and developing them. And then I'm training our trainers on our curriculum and our progression.
Okay, so I want to ask you about your time, head trainer, NFL Combine. You're getting these young people ready for the NBA. In that group of people, that group of athletes, everybody's looking for that edge, because how are you going to stand out, right? What are they doing to get that attention beyond just their skill levels?
Well, a lot of it, when you deal with a collegiate athlete, a lot of it's going to be on the agents, right? So, you have like ESPN, so many people that give these athletes a draftable grade. And and they probably have some scouts come out saying, hey, we've been watching you. If you have a good year, you probably have an opportunity to play at the next level. So then usually what happens is that the agents contact me and saying, hey, I have XYZ athlete that's thinking about going to the next level. Can you help to prepare for the biggest interview of your life? And I'm like, sure. So what I tend to do is I help these athletes so they can perform well on the field. And the thing about NFL Combine training is I prepare for this one test that they're never ever going to do again. So it takes a lot of buy-in, right? So I'm telling them, listen, everything you learned these past 20 years of your life, I need you to throw it out the window and learn what I need to teach you for this one interview. Then you can go back to doing what you used to do. So
that's incredible.
I think sometimes it gets a bit redundant. It gets frustrating for the athletes. They get tired. They get emotionally they run into a brick wall because it's a lot of repetitive things that we're doing to prepare them for this interview. But once they succeed at it, they get to live their best life for the rest of their life, and they get to set their family up for years to come.
Wow. There's so much pressure, especially in something like a combine where you got one shot,
It's a ton of me too. And I got to make sure we're taking the right athletes too, right?
Yeah.
So telling me it's my name on the line.
I wanted to ask you that, yes, because if you think about just the mental pressure that can build, and some people, you hear people get the yips, or that, they kind of don't do well under pressure, or maybe just that one time they didn't, and they have nightmares for the rest of their life. Like, I did it every other time except that one. How do you kind of walk them through all of that pressure mentally?
Early in my career, it was really hard for me because I was more of a peer than I was a performance coach. So I didn't have a lot of reps that really like getting an athlete there. Physically, I could train them because I knew what to do, but I think it starts mentally. If they don't buy into you mentally and emotionally, they're never going to want to do what you're telling them, what you're teaching them. So I think it's an initial interview. I'm sitting down and athletes are interviewing me just like I'm interviewing them. And I tell them that on the phone call, like, you choose me, I got to want to choose you too. It's a relationship. And I need you to complete your complete buy-in for the next 8 to 10 weeks for the biggest interview of your life. And if you're not willing to buy in, then I'm not the person for you. I'm not going to sit and yell at you all day. I'm not going to talk crazy to you. If you're the kind of kid that likes to go out and party, blah, 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 then I'm not the trainer for you. I need you completely locked in, tucked away for the next 8 to 10 weeks so that you can live the best life for the rest of your life, or I can't train you.
You've worked with, obviously, just countless athletes that we would know on a first-name basis, even like somebody like Paige. Anything stick out over the years? Any great, stories, relationships, things that have happened that you could share of somebody that we would know?
So many athletes. You got Paige's, you got Dylan Harper, who went number 2 in the NBA draft this year, that we have a relationship with. And, I got a lot of upcoming guys who are coming out. One of our athletes just won an NBA championship, Dylan Jones for OKC.
Oh, wow.
And Adem Bono, who's with the 76ers. And, the thing about what these athletes always tell me is that it doesn't really get easier. They just understand the process more, right? So you got to think like a Paige who left college to go to the WNBA. It doesn't get easier. It's just that she understands the process a little bit better.
Sure.
Right? And she understands, like, hey, I got to be willing to be vulnerable in the room and make mistakes so I can become better. I think most athletes want to be perfect, and you're never going to be perfect. But you got to know how to manage your failures just like your successes. And it's never really your failure. It's just that, hey, it's a learned lesson.
Yeah.
And so once you're willing to be vulnerable as an athlete, now you open up room to be better.
One of the things that I think I've read that is really important to you is humility in this process.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about that with the vulnerability piece. Do you still do your podcast?
I'm starting to back up this fall. Yeah, me and Tanner talked about it the other day. About starting up the podcast, and for me, it's like I wanted people to see that these athletes are normal people, and they all have stories. Everybody has an individual story. Everybody has something that they're going through in life that it's their edge, right? Either it's going to make you or break you. And how to be one of one, how to be uniquely you and individually you that God created you to be. And so we teach these athletes that here at a young age that come to us. Like, I just had about 20 kids training, and they're sitting back watching all of our NFL guys training. And they're seeing that these guys are vulnerable. They're making mistakes, but they're making mistakes now so that when they get into their season, they don't make the same mistakes again. They just know how to manage it differently.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, and you're right. The perfectionism with athletes too is just, it's a whole nother subject. We really appreciate you taking some time to talk to us. I have just been so interested in learning more about what you're doing, your backstory. Very inspirational, just right there with what you've done and how much work you've put in. And I know professional athletes always say that, and people don't realize how much work goes into this. You
could come by and watch us, come hang out for a day or for an hour and watch us train. And, I think people, once you watch us and you're in a field or in a court with us, you get a different scope of what these athletes do. And think about how much time they're training to play for an hour or 2 hours in a game, but they're putting in 20, 30 hours a week just to prepare for that one moment, right? To make that one shot, that one touchdown catch, or to make that one tackle. How much preparation and time comes into play for that?
Yeah, it takes a special kind of person to commit, and congratulations to you on all of your success. Deventri Jordan, the founder of Game Face Training, director of TRIA Game Face as well. Hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, see you.